Welcome back, baseball fans, to another edition of the Prep Baseball Report of North Carolina podcast. I'm Brandon Hall. He's our director of scouting here in North Carolina, Matt Payne. Matt, how are we doing, buddy?
Doing good.
Great time of year. It's one of those favorite times of year for me. Obviously, we're still bombarded with trying to get information out. We're on the phone a bunch with college coaches and even some pro scouts as they're trying to finalize their 23. Some colleges their 24s. One of the things that we're seeing every day now is that number of teams that we're following is starting to dwindle. Conference tournaments are in play. The sad part is there are seasons coming to an end. There are players' careers coming to an end, and we take that into account. And while that hurts, it is a great time just because we're seeing the passion play out, the competition play out. You're seeing things kind of on the line, and you're seeing what this game means to a lot of players in this state.
Yeah, it is. It's a really exciting time, and it's hard to believe that some teams are done for the year now with conference tournaments kicking off. And you see those tweets and Instagram posts of, kids playing their last game, and a lot of times it's good players, and you hate they're not getting a chance to play one more time in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I love the conference tournament set up with a lot of these conferences. I never had one in high school. I didn't really think too much about it until I kind of got into this. But watching some teams make some runs. We had one of our scouts at Apex Friendship in Holly Springs last night. Apex Friendship's a very solid club, younger on the mound, and now they've upset two teams. They beat Apex on Monday. They beat Holly Springs on Tuesday as we're recording this on Wednesday. So they put themselves in a position where they've moved up the chart a little bit in terms of are they going to be slotted for one of those state tournament playoff spots. And I know there's a formula out there. I haven't cracked the code. I haven't even tried to crack the code. I know conference champions get in. Beyond that, I think everybody's holding their breath to see what the code and the Max Preps rankings actually do so that you know where you fall and who you're going to play as you get in the state tournament.
Yeah, kind of look through those a little bit, and you see some teams in the RPI they do that, maybe in the top 5 or 8, but they didn't win their conference, so you wonder, where their seed drops to when the playoff brackets come out this weekend or early next week.
Right, and which conference champion maybe gets screwed. Hey, we won, congratulations. Oh, by the way, here comes a dude, and you're going to get him in the first round and go to work. So I remember it wasn't my last year. It was probably 2011, 2012. We had recruited a young man by the name of Tyler Barnett out of Hickory. And Tyler was a quarterback for the football team, late bloomer, physical, athletic, lanky. But the fastball kind of took that jump in the senior year and went from being 88, 89 to being 92, 93, which in today's gun world would have been, he's 93, 95. And so we went in the state playoffs, and there were a freaking boatload of people in there to see him. And they're playing against a team that had gone 22 or 23-1 throughout the year as the number 1 overall seed. Hickory kind of backdoored it and snuck in. But congratulations, you had a great year. And here's Tyler Barnett, and he freaking punched 17 on his way to getting Hickory to the next round, where they got smoked in 4 innings after that. So, again, the one playoff game scenario can be tricky, can be scary because of that. Who lines up and who do you see right out of the gate?
Yeah, and then we look at conference tournament schedules this week, and you wonder who's trying to line up their pitching for the playoffs. Because if conference championship game's on Thursday or Friday night, and you try to win your conference tournament, then your ace or the guy you like may not be available in that first round on Tuesday.
Yeah, and what most schools looks like is they've done here. Some of the higher seeds have kind of figured out, we think we know who we're going to play. And so you may see, them start to set their ace up for later in the week. But a lot of them, because the brackets aren't out, because nothing's for sure, and because there are so many good arms across the state that may end up sneaking into the tournament, I think you do have to have your ace in a position where he can throw that game 1 if you need him. And you may not be able to make that decision until Monday when the powers that be, put the bracket out. I know it's funny following the coaches on Monday, because it's I guess it's supposed to be out like at 10 or 11 a.m. At noon we'll get an update that'll be out at 2. At 2 we get an update. It's going to be out at 6, and then about 6 we finally start to see the bracket and go, okay, here's where they're playing. Well, now these coaches are scrambling, trying to get scouting reports on a team they play in, 16, 17 hours, in a one-game scenario. So it's that first game is, I think, the key to the entire tournament. Can we get settled? Can we get into the tournament play? Can we get past some nerves of that one-game knockout stage and players seeing their future ending in front of them? Can we get past Tuesday? And if we do that, then we have a good chance to kind of just settle in and play and be who we are.
Yeah, and then you wonder how many coaches out there are hoping for a little weather at some point next week, so maybe they can push a game back a day and get a little extra rest for that pitching staff, where maybe they play Tuesday, Saturday next week, or do a little home field advantage to set their pitching up correctly.
Well, we've seen that. We've seen an ace start the first 3 games of a tournament before, just with the way it runs, and all of a sudden you're 3-0 and you're rolling. You haven't had to go in your bullpen except in a blowout and save some innings for the guy. But there's a lot of things that can happen in the one and done scenario, and it makes it exciting. I don't think it's the fairest form in terms of deciding a champion. I've expressed that before, but it definitely is exciting. And as we get closer into next week, you and I will start to break down the brackets on Monday and Tuesday, make some selections in terms of potential upsets in the first round, and maybe even pick a Final Four and a champion. I think we picked Final Fours last year, and I think I had like 2 left after the second round out of all 5 brackets maybe that we picked. So it can be a tournament that runs to form, and you go, okay, I know who's going to be in the championship game, and here they are. It can also be a tournament that gets turned upside down on its ear, and you get 2 teams that were battling to be 500 through most of the year. All of a sudden, they're playing in a regional to get to a championship game scenario.
Yeah. I look at our Power 25, and a lot of the top 6-8 schools is from the East, and they're in the 4A. So obviously, we have teams that we think are the best 10 teams in the state that may face each other early and beat up on each other early, and may not even make it to the Final Four.
So let's jump into that. The Power 25 came out here in North Carolina on Monday. It's providing the top 25 teams in the state of North Carolina, regardless of your classification. As long as you're playing for a state championship in North Carolina, you're eligible. We've got the teams, and then we've got their records, we've got their previous rank, and then we've got, you did a great job, giving us details on all 25 teams, how they've been playing, what's been successful, things to look out for, bumps in the road, things of that sort. And, the first thing that jumped out to me was the top 6 in this week's rankings were the exact same as last week. So obviously at the top of this poll, we've got some teams playing very, very well. And then the next thing that jumped out to me was exactly what you're talking about. Wake Forest, Middle Creek, Pinecrest, New Hanover, J.H. Rose, Corinth Holders. All those teams, I think, and I could be mistaken, but I think all of those teams are 4A East. Is that about right in your recollection, or missed somebody?
I think Rose is 3A.
Okay, so
Conley's 4A. That's that split conference where
I got no shot following all that.
It's easy to get them twisted up.
But even with that, I mean, there's going to be a second or third round matchup. Pinecrest, New Hanover, Corinth Holders, Middle Creek. And, who lined their pitching up right? Who gets to play at home? These are going to be some things that may decide how those games play out. And it's great for us as fans because we get to see these teams match up right out of the chute, which is a great thing. In terms of developing a Power 25, you then have to go back and justify at the end of the year. A team got knocked out in the second round, you keep them in the top 10. So it's a double-edged sword there.
Yeah, it is. And that's part of what makes the playoffs so exciting is the one and done and, the upsets that happen early. But then on the flip side, you'd like to see some 3-game series. So maybe the true best team wins more often than not. But either way, it's exciting, and some really good teams in the top half of our Power 25.
As we go further down the Power 25, one of the teams that's jumping out to me, and I think you saw them, and so you can give a little bit more background on, but they probably are one of the hottest teams in the state. At number 11, Orange High School out of Durham. It's a team that was not in our first couple Power 25s, snuck in about week 3, and then immediately lost, bumped out. They may have even lost 2 that week. And then now they've gotten hot, and they jumped back into our Power 25 2 weeks ago at number 17. They continue to win. They're sitting at 19-2, and now all the way up to number 11. What have you seen from Orange? What do you like about what the Panthers have done so far this year?
Really consistent over the last few weeks. I feel like once they hit spring break, they really got on a roll. And you go through their scores, and they'll win a game 3-1, which tells me they can pitch it pretty well. And then the offense is put up runs at times too. And it's an older club, and they're kind of led by Jackson Marini there at the top, who's just a grinder, spark plug for them. And you see those boxes, and it kind of feels like they go as he goes. And they also have some thump in there with Ryan Hinch and a few other guys that have hit the long ball for him at times this year.
One of the things you had in your notes that's on the article posted on prepbaseballreport.com, much of their roster experienced last year's third-round playoff loss to J.H. Rose. And I think just that one statement, they returned a bunch of guys from that club. They've made a run into this. They've gotten to the second week of this tournament. They've gotten to the point in the tournament where you've gotten in and you've gotten relaxed. You're playing well past what 3/4 of the state's baseball teams are playing, so everybody's kind of eyes on you. That experience, I think, matters for these types of clubs, knowing how to navigate the first and second rounds. And you see it with teams like a TC Roberson or J.H. Rose or a New Hanover. Year after year after year, there's that culture of we know how to work this tournament. Their coaching staff knows how to work this tournament. And I think that plays a big deal into this.
Yeah, and I think you look at them and J.H. Rose, and I think that's where the seeding gets important. Is if they do face each other again, who gets the home game? Orange has a beautiful ballpark. They have a good atmosphere. Rose has a good atmosphere, and you mentioned TC Roberson right there, and that's, I think, an advantage they have in the West is you have to go there and play it's a little bit different setup, almost like a little stadium field there, and I think that's
Right.
You get into home field advantage where that matters in the playoffs.
Well, and the other thing that happens, and some of these clubs do experience it in the spring, but they have to travel. You have to get on a bus. You have to sit on a bus for 2.5 hours. You got to plan a meal out around your pregame and then getting to the game. You're going to get to the field a lot earlier than you would normally get because you have to expect traffic because you don't want to be late. All of these things throw off your normal rhythms, your normal timing of what's going on. Teams that have planned for this during the regular season tend to adapt to it. Teams that have experienced this in playoffs in the past tend to adapt to it. But if it's your first time and all of a sudden you're used to being at the field 2 hours and 15 minutes before the game with all of your conference games being within 20 minutes of each other, and now all of a sudden you're taking a 2.5-hour bus ride and you're there 3 hours and 15 minutes before the game, you have an hour to kill before we're going to stretch. Now, okay, what happens? And it's a small thing, but in a 7-inning game, a small thing can cost you 2 innings. And in a one and done scenario, that can cost you your season. So
yeah, I think you go back to the top half of the bracket there, you're going to have a Wilmington school that has to go to Raleigh or vice versa, and then you get in the West, a mountain school or somewhere like that has to go down to Charlotte, and you don't do that during the year often, so it changes your routine and how you feel and different perception of things.
And it plays into the importance of the coaching staff, and what is the coaching staff providing in terms of support for its players. And even to a point, what's the school providing? Some schools have charter buses. Some schools are taking the activity bus. Some schools have 5 and 6 coaches in the dugout. Some schools have 1. That stuff can matter. And in a 1-run game and a 7-inning game, those little things can start to kind of pile up and mark up in terms of giving players their best chance to be great night in and night out. Matt, as we kind of continue down and looking at some of these teams, and there's a team at 18 I want to talk about, High Point Christian. I've seen them. It's a left-handed heavy lineup. It's a physical lineup. They've got some seniors on the mound. They've got experience. They won a state title last year. Now they're sitting at 22-3. I think it's going to be they're an interesting team to evaluate because we don't see them in a conference where they're tested constantly night in and night out. But now as they get into their state playoff run, we're going to get to see them. Can they bounce back? Can their three get some key wins and some key outs? Can their one and their two really sustain them in games against quality opponents? One of their losses, I think, was this past week to Westchester Country Day, where they saw Josh Hammond, a really, really good arm committed to Wake Forest. So they've seen good arms. That's not going to surprise them. They get that into that tournament level. Kind of your expectation for High Point Christian as we see the brackets released. I think they're an independent school, NCISSA 3A. I think. Yeah. Don't hold me to that. But what are kind of the expectations for you?
I think they're the easy favorite in the NCISA 3A. They're loaded team. They had a loss recently, but still jumped up just with their body of work and the talented roster. Sometimes you get in those teams, like you said, it's hard to evaluate them a little bit because maybe they don't play have the conference schedule that's has the depth of some leagues, or maybe the rivalries that some of the public school leagues have, to where no matter how good or bad a team is, they have that passion and little hometown rivalry. I think maybe you missed that a little bit with some of the private school stuff, but obviously a loaded team, and would be surprised if they didn't win another state championship.
Another private school team that I've seen that I think has a chance to do something special this year. And one of the teams that fell out of our rankings, and I went back and looked, I think it's the first Power 25 that you and I have put out over the last 4 years that didn't include Charlotte Christian. And they're sitting in fourth in their conference right now. Providence Day and Covenant Day are playing this week, a 2-game series where Covenant Day won the first game, scoring 3 in the top of the 7th to win 4-3, or they won a one-run game last night to take game 1 of that series and move their magic number to 1. But the team that played Charlotte Christian last year for the 4A state championship was Metrolina Christian Academy. Really young club last year. Perry Hargett at short. Another middle infielder is committed to East Carolina. They've got a Davidson commit. They've got several other players that have continued to tick up and get better. They've got a freshman in Chase Kiker, who's a strike thrower with a really good breaking ball that's kind of led them at times on the mound. So, this is a club that has a chance to do so. They got a chance to play last year and get a taste of that tournament run. I think that tournament at the 4A level is wide open. Obviously, Wesleyan Christian is sitting out there with Sam Cozart. Who's going to get matched up with him? How are you going to get around that big arm? But I think Metrolina Christian's offense has a chance to touch him at times. Not that they're going to pile up hits, but they're not going to have to play for a 1-0 game. So teams like that excite me as we're looking at the tournament because they're getting to build that history. There's not a ton of history with them making deep runs in the playoffs, but they have it in front of them this year. And I think for that 4A group at that level, it's wide open because we don't know what Charlotte Christian, if they're going to make the tournament, and then 2, what you're going to see when you do see the tournament. It's still a very, very talented team. They've just lost a bunch of close, 1 and 2 run games.
Yeah, it's very different not seeing them in our Power 25. And, even, growing up in the state, that's a program that, you had respect for as a player, and then get on the other side of it and see what they do year in and year out, not having them in there. But then you go to Metrolina Christian, and the lineup's got power in the lineup. They got speed. They're really good up the middle with Hargett, and I think it's Neil Griffin, and having a great year. And I think
that's it.
The 4A side of that bracket could be very exciting, because if your Charlotte Christian gets in, I mean, you still got to have their history. So it's they may be having somewhat of a down year for them, but they can beat you on any night too.
Matt, we're going to wrap up the talk about the Power 25. I'm going to ask you, I'm going to give you my answer first, but I'm going to ask you the same question. I want you to give me a club that's outside the Power 25 now. It maybe isn't even on the radar for the Power 25. Not a team that's been bouncing around in and out, and you go, okay, they just didn't have a good week. I'm looking for a club that's maybe way on the outside that has a chance to wreck a tournament bracket. And the team I'm going to give you is a team I saw over spring break. The Broughton Caps out of Raleigh. They've gone 9-0. I know Sammy's going to love me talking about this. They've gone 9-0 in the Cap Six. They've got one more game in that conference to try and go clean sweep for the year, which is a very difficult thing when you start talking about, Leesville Road's got arms. Sanderson's got a deep lineup. Cardinal Gibbons is a good club. Athens Drive's got some talent on their roster. So they've been able to kind of make this run. It's a conference where I think this is one of the conferences where there was a lot of changeover, because I know in the past, Millbrook, Sanderson, Garner's been in it in the past. Wakefield's been in the past. Wake Forest possibly in the past. So the conference has switched. It's still got some depth, and going 10-0 in that league is good. At 9-0 right now, they were 14-7 going into conference play. A couple non-conference games kind of mixed in there and out. So obviously their conference play has really picked them up and put them in a position where I think they have a chance to have some confidence about themselves. My point on them, and the reason I think they have a chance to wreck some brackets, they've got some senior leadership and they've got some tough outs in their lineup. They're not going to be fazed by seeing a good arm. Then they also have a sophomore, Sam Harris, as an NC State commit, who's a legitimate ace. It's athletic. It's multiple arm slots. The fastball is not going to scare you in terms of what the gun's telling you. It may in about 3 years. But it's movement, it's location, and then he's got a slider. And the slider is a wipeout, devastating pitch. You factor those things together. On nights he throws, they're going to have some confidence. On nights he doesn't throw, I think their lineup has a chance to punch some holes in some really good pitchers and force them to really work. So we'll see how that plays out. But for me, Broughton's a team to kind of watch. It hasn't really been on the radar of our Power 25, but may wreck shop a little bit as they get in the conference tournament. You got one for me?
I'll go Southern Lee.
Okay.
Saw them over spring break. You sit there and you watch them play, and you're like, that's a really good baseball team. And the record may not speak for how good they are, but you look, last 2 games they beat Lee County, which is a talented club. We've had them in our Power 25 at times this year. But they have 3 pitchers. They have Pierce Bowman, who also swings the bat for them, can beat you. Kel Scruggs, I believe he's a Wilmington commit, and then another kid, Cooper Harrington, who's his brother was a first rounder recently. Plays short when he's not pitching, but seen him throw, and it's strike thrower with a breaking ball. And have another kid in the outfield, Jalen Jones, who there's some swing and miss there, but when he hits it, there's some thump behind it. And I look at them that's a team you don't want to play early, and you let them win rounds 1 and 2. You may see them in the Final Four of the 3A East there.
Depth on the mound, because they're going to be able to mix and match. If one guy's not on, they can make a quick switch and get that guy back in the next game. And I like their lineup, because Pierce Bowman at times has carried that lineup too. And so they've had some games where they've had to win 14-11. They don't have a lot of those games, but they got a couple in there where they've out-hit some people because they needed to. So that's a very interesting selection. And I agree with you that that's not somebody that another team necessarily wants to see lined up on their half of the bracket. Let's see if we can't get them on the other side or on the bottom if we're on the top, and let them kind of work their way through and get knocked out before we get to them. So the Power 25, it's up. It's on PrepBaseballReport.com. Go to North Carolina's news. You'll see it down there. We're going to release our final Power 25 of the regular season next Monday, which is a little different. We're not going a week in between. It'll be released next Monday as we get ready for the state tournament. And then our final Power 25 will be after all the state tournaments. We got 2 of them remaining, and excited to see how all that plays out. Matt, with us getting close to tournament time, it also means that we're getting closer to our summer, our events, and our player evaluation. So I know we've got 3 big open events already on this website. Team Carolina Trials in Charlotte, our Team Carolina Trials East, which will be hosted at Campbell, and our North Carolina-South Carolina border battle. Talk to me a little bit about these events and the ability to see players and start to dive in deeper in terms of what these players are about.
Yeah, exciting time. You get to see some progress that guys have made that maybe we haven't seen in over a year and things like that. But start with our border battle, and we play South Carolina in it, and it's been an exciting event the last few years and a talented event. It's also been heavily attended by college coaches and even some pro guys rolling through there. And I think we enjoy. You see the kids work out, but then you see them toe it up and play at Charlotte there, which is a great place to play. And even the Team Carolina trials, it seems like every year we have somebody who maybe we've heard the name but don't have a history with that shows up and impresses. And next thing you know, they're at the future games with us at Lake Point and committing not long after that. And it'll be time to put that team together before long. And best event in the country there. And uh, it's going to be some tough decisions putting that roster together here in the next couple months.
Yeah, with what's happening in recruiting, we do expect to see commitments down throughout the summer from our younger classes, which is good for us as we're taking a team to the future games. It's going to make those roster spots a lot more coveted, though. And I think it has a chance to elevate some of our other events. Our North Carolina South Carolina border battle, we may see guys that, were already invited to future games, now attending this for the exposure aspect. Obviously future games last week in July, 400 plus college coaches there, really one game at a time, national exposure. Briggs McKenzie was a big winner last year and just absolutely lit it up on day 3. And, went from being a guy that was fairly well known in the state to being a guy that's on every national radar and committing to LSU. With our team trials, the thing that I'm always excited about with these events is we come off the road in the spring and we've seen these guys playing games. We've seen pitchers throw. We've seen, hitters, and sometimes you're not getting a really good feel for how athletic a defender is because he may not have a whole lot of plays. And the infield, outfield may be, suspect. Hitters are being pitched around a little bit. Maybe guys are still kind of working on their in-game approach, and it doesn't give us a great feel for what their swing has a chance to be in the next couple of years. So we get to kind of marry those two things together, that game player and then that workout player. As I'm evaluating and I'm trying to decide, players are going to come play for me if I'm a college coach or a pro scout, I'm going to tend to look more to that game player. It gives me a better aspect as to competitiveness and the ability to take the fundamentals and apply them directly. But for that guy that is a little bit better workout guy, and maybe he's just not applying it yet, and there's 5 or 6 names flooding into my head right now, guys that can run but haven't shown game speed yet, guys that are really athletic and can get to balls. They just aren't catching the baseball cleanly all the time just yet. They're just 2,000 reps away. Those are the guys I get excited about because those are the guys that have a chance to kind of be late developers. We see it with pitchers all the time, man. In that bullpen, the ball's moving, he's located, and it's loose, it's athletic. It's just reading 84, 85, not 90, 92. But you can look at the frame and you can look at how clean the arm is and go, it's going to get there. Now, is that guy getting a ton of innings for his high school team? He may not because they may have a guy that's 90, 92. But now we're seeing some of those flowers start to bloom. And that's what the showcase environment and the workout has a chance for us to do. It gives us another glimpse at the player in a different light, allowing us maybe to project his future a little bit more. Is he going to hit his ceiling? We can't predict that. But it gives us a pretty good feel for what the ceiling has a chance to be. And that's why those metrics can be important. And seeing guys, turn in a 10, a 30, and a 60 time. Seeing what the blast metrics are, seeing what the TrackMan metrics are, getting slow motion video, getting regular speed video, putting all those things together, and all of a sudden at the end of the day, we've got a pretty good feel for who that player is and what he may have a chance to be.
Yeah, a couple of names that come to mind. Cade Morris showed up at a Team Carolina trials last year. We'd heard the name, maybe a little bit of mixed reviews of I think he can be really good. He may just be good. And he shows up, throws, impresses, and then he goes to future games and dominates. And, ACC commitment not long after that. And then you touched on the gameplay. Boaz Harper jumps out for me, who,
Yep.
We've seen him work out, look good in the workout. Maybe haven't seen him a whole lot in the game. We take him to future games. He's on the field with some of the best players across the country, and gets his feet wet there. And I think he used that as confidence, and now he's committed to North Carolina.
Yeah, that's 2 great examples, because you could really see with Cade Morris, you could see what the upside was in that bullpen. And TrackMan's feeding you numbers, and you're going, man, that's really good. It didn't translate in that spring, though, because he's a basketball guy. And by the time they kind of really got rolling, and he had a late basketball season, they made a run state semis or state championships last year. So his spring season was really cut short, and we'd heard glimpses in the summer. Man, he was really good. Man, he was erratic. But that bullpen setting and the numbers we're getting, it was a no-brainer. He's got to go. He's got to go with us. Guys that size don't do what he was doing. And to your point with Boaz, it's fun to watch him play defense. He moves around. It's so rhythmic, so effortless. He has fun with that. And then again, does it translate into the games? I don't think it was translating into games when he was in his freshman year, but that's going to come. We're going to see that happen. The more and more he takes ground ball, again, 2,000 reps away, he's going to be more and more comfortable with what's happening. So we've got, on the site right now, Team Carolina Trials, calling it Team Carolina Trials Charlotte, I guess. It's in Mooresville, North Carolina at Moore Park. Then we got Team Carolina Trials East. It's going to be at Campbell University. And then we got our border battle. I think that's sandwiched in between there. We've got one more other Team Carolina Trials that we're going to be trying to post. We're just waiting to finalize that field. We've got Scout Days starting up. Players, if you attend an event already this year, reach out to myself or Matt. There are discounts available to attend a second or a third event during the year. We don't, we're not real big on you got to come to everything we do. We get it. You guys are out playing everywhere. But if you've already attended an event, we've taken care of some of your costs for the year already. Reach out to us. You deserve a discount. We have a discount. We will give you a discount. You are not bothering us. So feel free to reach out to us. Matt, final words on some of the events we got going on and getting started with that aspect.
Question we get a lot is what colleges will be there. By rule, we can't advertise that, but those events have been well attended by college coaches, and even scout days are different things where coaches may not be there. Coaches are checking in to see what you're doing and get information. So they're heavily followed from a recruiting standpoint.
Yeah, and in all honesty, you and I probably hurt their attendance a little bit because we've got so many friends that are still working in the business. Their feeling is, well, you're going to tell me what they were anyway. I'm going to go through your notes. I'm going to go through everything that you could post, and I'm going to call Matt Payne. And Matt, this is the guy I'm interested in. Do I need to go see him? Yes or no? And Matt's going to say, yeah, you got to go see him. Okay. I didn't need to be there to figure out I need to go see him. Matt was able to tell me, boom, I can go see him now. And so a lot of times that's how it's happening. So I know you and I, that week after the event, we're trying to get all the numbers, all the information plugged into the system. And we're, basically turning our phones off so we can get that done. And we turn those suckers back on. And we've got 30 phone calls we got to make with coaches that are working their tails off trying to ID players that have already gone through all the stuff that we've already posted. So it's a great point there. And I'm excited to kind of get back out on the road and see these guys in actions and be around them and get a chance to talk and learn and get a feel for who they are too. So we'll start to close this thing down, Matt. Let's talk a little bit about, I know we jumped into the state playoffs and talked heavily about, some of the teams and some of the things we may see. Is there an area of the state that maybe you haven't seen a whole lot of this year that you're kind of interested to see how they're going to finish and how they're going to be in the state tournament, just based on watching box scores and things like that?
I go to the Greensboro area a little bit. There's some good teams there. Their conferences are split to where, maybe not as balanced as some other leagues, bigger area. Be interested to see where those teams go in the first round, and if they knock off some people that we've been high on throughout the year.
Yeah, I always get interested, and I really try to dial in when you start seeing, cross region. A mountain team goes to the Triad, a mountain team, a Charlotte team goes to the mountains. A beach team, even heads into Raleigh or even to Greenville. It's not quite as far. A team in the Northeast, that really, in all honesty, and not getting as much pub and as much coverage because it's harder for us to get there than it is to Raleigh. The second thing I look for is how much do teams in similar conferences or the same conference ruin brackets? Excuse me. What I mean by that is East Forsyth, West Forsyth. I don't know who else is getting in. Reagan, Davie. You know, that conference may have 3 or 4 teams in it. At some point, are they knocking themselves out? And hopefully it's not till the third round, but we've seen it in the second. We've seen teams in Raleigh. You know, you get through your first round game, and then boom, it's number 2 and number 3 from the same conference playing each other. You know, and trying to navigate that. So those are the two things I kind of get fired up to see: is how does that interconference rivalry in a 1-game scenario, because those teams know each other so well, how does that play out? But then also, how does it play out when teams have to cross regions? Is there a region in your head that you feel like it's harder to travel to and win?
Uh, I would think if you're Metro, Winston, Greensboro, and you have to make the trip to Asheville, you may go up there in May and catch a cold, windy night that you haven't had in a while. Uh, and then I think about Greenville and the love for baseball there from the youth level up to where you go in there. I mean, you're kind of that game can go any way just because of the passion and the energy that'll be in the stadium for a playoff game.
Yeah, so there's a couple places like that, and I think that can almost it's baseball in the town. It's not just the high school baseball. Like Greenville gets fired up about Little League baseball,
Yep.
and so they draw well. If Rose gets knocked out, a lot of their fans and family will go watch Conley play, and whether they're rooting for Conley or not, that's whatever. But they're there because they love baseball. They love that excitement. They want the popcorn smell. They just want to be around that game, and so those games are packed. Other areas I think of Cherryville, RS Central, Rowan County. You catch Rowan County, you catch East Rowan at home, you better be there an hour and a half before the game because they're going to start to fill those bleachers up, and you're going to be way down the lines trying to watch and get a feel of what's going on. But I also agree with you. I think traveling up the mountain is probably the biggest home field advantage, and I would love to see that those brackets play out where some of those teams get that experience. Roberson's got a chance to play at home throughout. Will West Henderson be able to stay at home? Some of the other teams that are up in that area, when they get home games and making it difficult. And, you worked up the mountain, so you may not have had this experience as much as me, but I can remember going up the mountain to see a right-handed pitcher throw early in the season. And it was probably late March. But we had practice at Charlotte. So it was a lighter day, so we were allowed, T-shirt and shorts was fine. It was just kind of a move around activation day. So I wore T-shirt, shorts. I had to put sunscreen on, and I had a bucket hat on for that day at practice. I knew going up the mountain it's going to be colder. So I had jeans, I had a polo, I had a pullover. I got to the game, and it was 55 degrees. Perfect. The JV game went and went and went and went, and my 6 o'clock start got pushed like 7:15. Some sort of storm system came in with just wind and cold air, no rain, and it went from 55 to 28 in about 30 minutes. And about the second inning, I just called our head coach and said, hey, this evaluation on this kid sucks because he got loose an hour before the game. They've scored 9 runs in the first. He's trying to go back out there, and the temperature dropped 40 degrees from his first inning to his second inning. So I'm leaving. And our head guy was like, yeah, that's fine, whatever. I agree with you. We'll go back up and see him again. What I really was I was freezing my freaking off. And I didn't have enough clothes. I need to figure out a reason to get out of there. You can't hide from it. And so, I don't know if that's going to happen in May, but there are probably some teams that have been playing in 78-degree weather. Maybe Roberson schedules a 7 o'clock game knowing it's going to be in the 50s and see if they can't catch somebody, shivering a little bit for that first and second inning.
Yeah. Hey, question. I'm sure people's asked it or thought about it. How concerned should we be about East Forsyth and East Rowan heading into the playoffs with their recent struggles?
That's a great question. So East Forsyth doesn't bother me. And one of the things that happened in our polls this week is our Power 25 gets released on Monday, and you do a great job on that, and then we send all that stuff in. Well, because we're getting to the end of the year, typically they would just take the schedule and the records from prior, and they'll leave our teams in the order with the regional rankings and then with the national rankings. Well, West Forsyth and East had a game moved to Monday, and so that Monday score came out as they were doing the national, and that loss, they were at 23, bumped them behind Wake Forest in our region, bumped them behind St. John's, who's a team out of Maryland in our region, and bumped them out of the national. So you're going to see the number one ranked team in the Power 25 behind the number two ranked team in the Power 25 in the region. And that number two ranked team is in the national ranking. The number one ranked team isn't. And it's because of the Monday score. The loss doesn't bother me because of this. I think they got ambushed earlier in the week when Harrison Lewis was as good as he was. I heard reports up to 95, holding 90, 92, and we've seen him throw. We know he can do that. And it wasn't like the game got out of hand. They had a chance to tie the game late in the fifth or sixth with runners in scoring position, and just didn't get it done. And then Harrison hit a home run late, kind of insurance run, and seal the deal. The Monday game, I think, got away from them a little bit. But there's still time with this week to kind of regroup, reset. Okay, we've had our slip up. Now we can go. With East Rowan, it doesn't bother me when Mako's on the mound. And he's had some games where he's sprayed the ball a little bit. But if he's on the mound, I think they're the best team that they'll be on the field that day. Where they've struggled is they're 2, they're 3, they're 4, they're 5, they're 6, they're 7, who are usually they've got a bunch of guys that throw strikes. Those guys haven't thrown as many strikes as they need to. And so can they get that fixed? That's a bigger question. I think they've been exposed a little bit in terms of how good is their depth on the mound, and can they use their depth the way they've used it in the past, running 4 and 5 and 6 different pitchers out there to change looks when they need to. If one of them figures it out, they're going to be fine. But if they stay where they're at right now and all those guys continue to scuffle a little bit, they're going to be a team that's going to have to do some things different to win games. They may have to win, with special teams or an onside kick or something there late.
Yeah, I mean, both of us have seen that club, and I know we both commented on the depth of the lineup and what they have there. It just, you always wonder, losing late before the playoffs start, is it good for a club, or does it make them question how good they are? And it's interesting to see which way that goes.
Yeah, and I'm gonna lean on both those coaching staffs, because I think both those coaching staffs have been through this before. They both have been around teams that have had expectations getting into the tournament, and now how do we handle those expectations coming off a week like we had last week, and then move forward? So I'm putting some trust in those coaching staffs, knowing them. But you're still dealing with the psyche of 14 to 17-year-olds. And so do those guys snap back in? Honestly, the teams that I were around with, most of those guys have such a short memory until they really get into college. Then the memory lengthens a little bit. They all think they're going to win a state championship.
Yeah.
What happened last week doesn't matter. We'll figure out a way to win. The trick is when it gets really tight in the fifth inning, do they revert back and go, oh my gosh, what are we doing? Or do they just trust and continue to play?
And I think that's the one good thing of the North Carolina setup is when the playoffs start on, Tuesday or whenever, everybody has a chance to win.
Yeah.
I mean, you play good on one night, you can play a long time.
That's right. And that's a really good point. And we've seen teams that have won state championships that really weren't the best team in the state, but they played the best for about 3 weeks. And they had the right matchups, and they had the right guy on the mound. They had a guy on the mound get hot. They had a guy in the lineup get hot, and all of a sudden, boom, bang, bam, they're in a three-game series in the region. They're in a 3-game series in the state championship, and they get a complete game out of somebody. They get a home run out of somebody, and they're holding up the trophy. So that is something that's unique in our state. I'm still not a fan of the setup, but I do like the fact that you do have that opportunity.
Mooresville a couple years ago.
That's the one I was thinking of. Mooresville, and then even North Lincoln, was it the year before? Or maybe the same year.
Maybe in the same year.
Because I think both of them were at UNCG. So I was sitting there for both games and watching it play out. And really, two clubs that talent-wise weren't as good as the team they were beating, but they played better baseball. They threw more strikes. They caught the baseball cleaner. They put more balls in play. And I know as much as is going on in the world these days, and it's dimmed down a little bit about home runs, doubles, launch angle. When we get into playoffs, who puts the ball in play? You can almost go back through and go strikeouts and errors will determine winners more so than anything else. The team with the most strikeouts has a chance to win. The team with the fewest errors has a chance to win. And if you're both of those, you probably win.
Yep.
All right, Matt.
Very true.
Another great podcast from us. Again, for our fans out there, if you hadn't, there's a subscribe button in YouTube. Head on over to YouTube if you're not watching it there. Spotify, subscribe. Get weekly updates when we post this stuff. And it's going to be fast and furious from here on out because we got playoff baseball to talk about. For Matt Payne, I'm Brandon Hall. This is the Prep Baseball Report of North Carolina podcast. We'll see you at the field.